So about a week ago, I did a video explaining the Immortal team comp, and towards the end of that video, I kind of wrote a blank check for anybody in the comments that if there's something that as a newer player or a more experienced player that you still don't quite get, to put that in the comments and I would go ahead and get to covering that in the near future. And believe you me, I saw the several people asking about the multi-core team comps. I'll get to that one in a couple of days. But one that really caught my eye was one comment in particular asking if I could explain the skills you're not supposed to level, or skills that people will tell you to just kind of go out of your way, you don't need to bother with those ones. Because that got me thinking for two different reasons. One, there are legitimately skills that people will tell you that you don't have to level. Think of something like Karna's first skill that just isn't very good, at least for what his purpose is going to be. And so they'll tell you you don't have to worry about leveling that, which might be a little confusing for some players. So I'm going to use that as one of my examples. And then the other thing is more so what skills you should prioritize, where you'll have a servant that someone will tell you, oh, don't level skill 1 and 3, level skill 2. And usually for those servants, think of somebody like a Summer Ibuki who you're going to level all 3 of her skills. They're trying to tell you what the priority levels are going to be to make your life easier. And what that comes down to normally is going to be batteries. Batteries being the term for just a servant's ability to immediately give themselves NP. That can be anywhere from 10% to 100%. But it's just the act of a servant being able to immediately, on demand, give themselves access to more NP. And while normally skills kind of function along the, how you would think of an RPG, you level them up, they get strong. Skill level 1, maybe you're getting a 10% attack buff, a 10% battery, a 10% crit damage buff. By the time you take that to skill level 10, you're getting like a 20% attack buff, 30% crit, and like a 30% battery. But some skills are a little weird where they'll have effects on them that do not scale. And now, yes, I do acknowledge this is an issue for FGO where they don't tell you what these values are in the game. They give you keywords of saying like gives you a little bit of NP or gives a massive amount of NP. They'll use little keywords like that. But unless you've been playing the game for a long time, you're really not going to piece together that, oh, like a gargantuan amount of NP is like 50%. You're probably going to have to go to something like the wiki or GamePress, some type of external source, or hey, videos of yours truly where I break the servants down completely. But yeah, that is a fault of the game that they don't tell you which ones are fixed and which ones aren't, and frankly, what buffs you're getting from those skills, but probably a quality of life upgrade we'll see at some point in the near future. I would at least keep my fingers crossed about that. But some of those skills, like I was saying, have a fixed battery, or they just have fixed buffs, where leveling them up is mainly for getting those secondary effects up, or more importantly, lowering the cooldown. You'll see that a lot with survivability skills. People will level them up even if they maybe don't seem like they do a whole lot, yet so that you can see those invincibilities, those dodges more frequently, because a skill going from 1 to 10 will lower its cooldown by 2. But again, not really what people are telling you to not prioritize skills for. Let's say you have a servant that has a fixed 30% battery, or in a servant that you probably know about, Waver, all of his batteries are fixed, meaning that no matter how much you level up Waver's skills, he is not going to give more battery. His crit skill will always, no matter what it's level 1 or 10, will give you 30% battery. The attack and defensive skills will always give you 10% to the entire party, no matter what. They will never raise higher than those values unless he gets a skill buff or something in the future. But if you're watching this in like 4 years from now and they've upgraded Waver, then something has gone wrong with the power creep in my opinion. But that is besides the point. A servant like that, newer players will be told that you don't need to prioritize leveling up his skills because the main thing he's giving you is the battery. Sure, the attack buff, the defensive buff, and the crit damage are all really nice, but getting by early on in FGO usually consists of just trying to blast the enemy with as many NPs as frequently as you can. You might not be able to start the game off and say, oh, well, I'm going to 3-turn this with my art setup, or 3-turn this with my quick setup, my buster setup, because you might be lacking Castoria, either one of the Scotties or Koyanskaya even, and so you might not be able to replicate the high-end setups or the normal setups for each of the respective card type metas. So you're going to be more reliant on blasting enemies with your NP, which is why it'll be recommended to go after those skills that give you the NP first. So instead of say someone like Summer Ibuki only having a 30% battery, she now has a 50% battery, which opens up a lot of doors for her, being compliant with not just Waver, who we just mentioned, who can give her a total of 50%, but also say a 50% starting charge CE, which are really common going into, different events. Usually we will get a CE that gives you a starting 50% battery, and it makes her very compliant with that. It will make your life a lot easier. And while you might be wondering, well, don't I also need damage to kind of, beat through these nodes with my servants? I mean, they're only NP1. If I'm just firing the NPs, is that going to be enough? And generally early on, yes, just firing your NPs are going to do a decent amount of damage. Even if your other skills are only at like skill 1 to 4, you'll still be able to get by. Take me, for example. When I started my JP account a good 3 years ago, the first thing I did was start to level up the skills of my supports, right? Because that way I'm getting more battery, but I'm also getting those attack and card buffs that will pretty much carry my low skill levels on my early DPSs. So you generally don't have to prioritize too many skills on your main DPS servant aside from their batteries when you're starting out. Obviously, as time goes on, as you want to do like 90 plus nodes, you want to fight harder bosses, you want to do those super recollection quests, you're going to need to start leveling up those other skills, but starting out, it's just prioritizing what's going to make your life the most easy. Now, the other one that we mentioned at the beginning of the video, that one is a little bit more difficult because that comes around to finding out what's good in the game and what's not in the game, and that isn't as easy to do as it was back in the day. Because back in the day, we could look at somebody like Karna's first skill and would say, well, this is a guy that we're going to use primarily for clearing waves. He's just going to be there as a farming servant and is still just that to this day. So leveling up a skill that reduces the enemy's debuff resistance and seals their NP for 1 turn, I mean, sure, sealing their NP can technically buy you a turn in a challenge quest, and reducing the enemy's debuff resistance does make the buster down on his NP more likely to land, but those are definitely worse skills than his second and third that allow him to be that looper that everybody uses him as. That's not to say you can't use Karna as a DPS servant in challenge quests. It's just he's not built for that, right? And it's why you'll even see to this day that people just don't level up the first skill. It's just not as important. And it's perfectly fine if you're like me and you're a perfectionist and you want to level up every little thing about servants you like, that's perfectly fine, but you just got to acknowledge sometimes that there's kind of no point to leveling up some of these other skills. Take Lancelot, for instance, the Berserker one. That's a servant I use all the time as well. Realistically, it's just his third skill that's important, giving him a massive amount of crit damage and a humongous amount of NP gain. Those are infinitely more important than giving him star weight when he's going to be bombing like 70 stars. You don't really need that when you have more stars than your entire team knows what to do with. And if you're already making that amount of stars, you don't need to buff his star drop rate on his second skill. You know what I mean? Like, there are just some servants that people will tell you that, yeah, you can level up those skills, but they cost a lot of materials, especially in Lancelot's case. It takes a lot of dragon materials, which is super annoying. And so they'll tell you, it's not worth it. You're not really getting a return on your investment, but that can definitely be hard to tell as a new player. What are good skills? What are worth the return on my investment? And unfortunately, it's just something you'll find out as you start researching more of the game. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but that's why I do the videos that I do, where I talk about, okay, this skill is good for X and Y reason, and you could pair it with X and Y combo to kind of give you a good idea of why it's good or maybe why it's not as good. What are the highs of the skill? What are the lows? Does it have lows? Does it have flaws? Is it completely broken? That's why I try my best to explain things in the way that I do, so that everybody can get a general grasp of how good or how bad something is, because it's just something you gotta learn over time. It's not something that in one day you're gonna be like, okay, I understand every single servant, I got this. I'm ready to get my PhD in FGOology, because I'll admit, I wasn't the most knowledgeable person the first couple of years playing the game. It's why I waited a long time to make the channel, even though I was playing the game since year 1. I was like, I don't really feel like I'm as knowledgeable as I want to be on the game, so I'm gonna wait until, around like year 3, which is when I think I started making content. I think the first video on this channel was why Scotty wasn't worth quitting over. That or it was the Okita altar video, I can't remember, but you get the whole gist. I had to wait a while until I felt like I knew enough about the game and I could look at a servant and tell that if they were going to be good or not. That's why I really like doing the blind reactions to servants nowadays. Instead of, waiting to be able to use them initially, I like to get a blind look at them first and see how good I think they are with my knowledge of the game. And then after testing them, if I feel like I was wrong, I'll come back and make a second video on them. Something like that happened for Draco, where I thought she was pretty much undeniably the best unit in the game when she dropped, and then I realized, okay, she's definitely really, really good. She's not the best unit in the game, though. That might have been a little bit crazy for me to say, so I came back with a follow-up video and said, all right, maybe I was talking a little bit crazy. But hopefully that gives you a really good idea of, how you kind of judge and evaluate skills, and or why people will tell you to not go in and level up different skills and whatnot, right? That getting good enough to evaluate things, it's just going to be something that happens over time. So, you'll watch my videos, other players' videos, you'll look at information on like the wiki, game press, you'll have discourse with people on Discord and Twitter, you'll come out to the ZTL streams and have a nice discussion with everybody in the chat. I assure you, nothing ever goes wrong in the live streams. That I would never. But yeah, as you do more of that, you'll get better at playing the game. So I know that, more people were asking about the multi-core video. I'll get that one out, but that one comment really struck me, as we have a lot of new players coming into the game, as FGO just does really, really good every single year. Even with the gripes we have, it just makes a dummy amount of money, and it's going to have a lot of new players coming into it that are going to have these questions about, like, why are people telling me to not level up this skill? Shouldn't I level up this skill? And it really just spoke to me as someone like thinking back to when I first started playing the game and was confused about, very similar things. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Hopefully we're getting the summer BB details in the next couple of days, because I could really go for a nice summoning sesh for that. But until that, we'll keep up the strong daily FGO content grind. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, and also in the comments, if there's any further questions that this might have opened up for you. Maybe you were like, okay, you said this thing, but now I'm curious about this completely other topic. Again, feel free to ask in the comments down below, and maybe, just maybe, it'll get made into its own video topic. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I've been rambling for too much, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace, light, guys.